My wife may give in to her husband, but she's withdraw and overreact to any new development in her mother health situation. If her mother were to be become seriously ill and die, the husband could never forgive himself. She couldn't forgive him either. Whatever compromise they finally agree on, it could be rehearsed over the years as evidence of the insensitivity, neglect, or a bad priority decisions on either part. It could be a source of contention for years and could even polarize the family. Many marriages that once were beautiful and soft and spontaneous and loving have deteriorated to the level of hostility through a series of incidents just like this. The husband and wife see the situation differently, and that difference can polarize them, separate them, create wedge in the relationship, or it can bring them closer together on a higher level if they have cultivated the habits of effective interdependence. They approach their difference from an entirely different paradigms. Their communication is on a higher level because they have a high emotional bank account. They have trust and open communication in their marriage because they think win-win. They believe in a third alternative, a solution that is mutually beneficial and is better than what either of them originally proposed because they listen empathically and seek first to understand. They create within themselves and between them a comprehensive picture of the value and the concern that need to be taken into account in making a decision. And the combination of those ingredients, the high emotional bank account, thinking win-win, and seeking first to understand, creates the ideal environment for synergy. Buddhism calls this the middle way. Middle in this sense does not mean compromise, it means higher, like the apex of the triangle. In searching for the middle or higher way, this husband and wife realize that their love, their relationship is part of their synergy. As the communication as they communicate, the husband really deeply feels his wife desire, her need to be with her mother. He understands how she wants to relieve her sister who has had the primary responsibility for their mother care. He understands that they really don't know how long she will be with them, and that she certainly is more important than fishing. And the wife deeply understands her husband's desire to have the family together and to provide a great experience for the boys. She realized the investment that has been made in lessons and equipment to prepare for his fishing vacation, and she feels the importance of creating good memories with them. So they pull those desires and they are not on opposite sides of the problem. They together on the side looking at the problem, understanding the needs and working to create a third alternative. They will meet them. Maybe we could arrange another time within the month for you to visit with your mother. He suggests I could take over the home responsibilities for the weekend and arrange for some help at the first of the week so that you could go. I know it's important to you have that time. Or maybe we could locate a place to camp and fish that would be close to your mother. The area wouldn't be as nice, but we could still be outdoor and meet other needs as well. And the boys wouldn't be climbing the wall. We could even plan some recreational activities with the cousin, aunts, and uncles, which would be added benefits. The synergy, they communicate back and forth until they come up with a solution they both feel good about. It's better than the solution either of them originally proposed. It's better than compromise. It's synergistic solution that builds P and PC instead of transaction. It's transformation. They get what they both really want and build their relationship in the process. Negative synergy. Seeking the third alternative is a major paradigm shift from the dichotomous ether or mentality, but look at the difference in results. How much negative synergy in typical expanded when people try to solve problems or make decisions in an interdependent reality, how much time is spent in confession, other people since politicking, rivalry, interpersonal conflict, protecting one's backside, masterminding and second guessing. It's like trying to drive down the road with one foot on the gas, the other foot on the brake. And instead of getting a foot off the brake, most people give it more gas. They try to apply more pressure, more eloquence, more logical information to strengthen their position. The problem is that highly dependent people are trying to succeed in an interdependent reality. They are either dependent or on borrowing strength from position power, and they go for win lose, or they are dependent on being popular with others. They go for lose win. They may talk win win technique, but they don't really want to listen. They want to manipulate, and synergy can thrive in that environment. Insecure people think that all reality should be amendable to their paradigm. They have a high need to clone others to mold them over into their own thinking. They don't realize that the very strength of the relationship in having another point of view. Sameness is not ownness. Uniformity is not unity. Unity or ownness is completeness, not sameness. Sameness is unattractive and boring. The essence of synergy is to value the difference. I've come to believe that the key to interpersonal synergy is interpersonal synergy. That is synergy within ourselves. The heart of interpersonal synergy is embodied in the principles in the first three habits, which give the internal security sufficient to handle the risks of being open and vulnerable. By internalizing those principles, we develop the abundance mentality of win-win and authenticity of the habit 5. One of the very practical results of being principle centered is that it makes us whole, truly integrated people who are scripted deeply in logical, verbal, left brain thinking will discover how totally inadequate that thinking is in solving problems which require great deals of creativity. They becomes aware and begin to open up a new script inside their right brain. It's not that the right brain wasn't there, it just lay dormant. The muscles had not been developed, or perhaps they had atrophied after early childhood because of the heavy left brain emphasis of formal education or social scripting. When a personal when a person has access to both the intuitive, creative, and visual right brain and the analytical, logical, verbal left brain, then the whole brain is working. In another word, there is psychic synergy taking place in our own head, as this tool is best suited to the reality of what life is, because life is not just logical, it's also emotional. One day I was presenting a seminar which I title manager from the left, lead from the right, to a company in Orlando, Florida. During the breaks, the president of the company came up to me and said, Stephen, this is intriguing, but I have been thinking about the material more in terms of its application to my marriage than to my business. My wife and I have a real communication problems. I wonder if you would have lunch with the two of us and just kind of watch how we talk each other. Let's do it, I replied. As we sat down together, we exchanged a few pleasantries. Then this man turned to his wife and said, now, honey, I invited Stephen to have lunch with us to see if he could help us in our communication with each other. I know you feel I should be a more sensitive, considerate husband. Could you give me something specific you think I ought to do? His dominant left brain wanted facts, figures, and specific parts. Well, I've told you before, it's nothing specific. It's more of a general sense I have about purities. Her dominant right brain was dealing with sensing and with the gestalt, the whole, the relationship between the parts. When do you mean? What do you mean? General feeling about priorities. What is it you want me to do? Give me something specific I can get a handle on. Well, it's just a feeling. Her right brain was dealing in images, intuitive feelings. I just don't think our marriage is important to you as you tell me it is. Well, what can I do to make it important? Give me something concrete and specific to go on. It's hard to put into words. At that point, he just rolled his eyes and looked at me as if to say, Stephen, could you endure this kind of dumbness in your marriage? It's just a feeling, she said, a very strong feeling. Honey, he said to her, that's your problem, and that's the problem with your mother. In fact, it's a problem with every woman I know. Then he began to integrate her as through it were some kind of legal deposition. Do you live where you want to live? That's not it, she seek. That's not it at all. I know, he replied with a forced patience. But since you won't tell me exactly what it is, I figure the best way to find out what it is, to find out what it is not. Do you live where you want to live? I guess Honey step in here for just a few minutes to try to help us. Just give me a quick yes or no answer. Do you live where do you want to live? Yes, okay, that's Seattle. Do you have things you want to have? Yes, all right. Do you do the things you want to do? The kind of how it goes in your relationship every day, Stephen, he replied. It's the story of our marriage, she seeks. I look at the two of them and thought crossed my mind that they were two half-brain people living together. Do you have any children? I asked. Yes, two. Really, I asked in, incredulously, how did you do it? What do you mean, how did you do it? You were synergistic, I said. 1 plus 1 usually equals 2, but you made 1 plus 1 equal 4. That's Now that's synergy. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So, how did you do it? You know how we did it, he replied. You must have valued the difference I explained. Valuing the difference is the essence of synergy, the mental and emotion, the mental, the emotional, the psychological difference between people, and the key to valuing those differences is to realize that all people are the world, not as it is, but as they are. As I think I see the world as it is, why would I want to value the difference? Why would I even want to bother with someone who off track? My paradigm is that I am objective. I see the world as it is. Everyone else is buried by the minutia, but I see the larger picture. That's why they call me supervisor. I have supervision. If that's my paradigms, then I will never be effectively interdependent or even effectively independent. For that matter, I will be limited by the paradigm of my own conditioning. The person who is truly effective has the humility and reverence to recognize his own perception perceptual limitation and to appreciate the rich resource available through interaction with the hearts and minds of other human being. The person values the difference because those differences add to his knowledge, to his understanding of reality. When we are left to our own experience, we constantly suffer from a shortage of data. It is it logical that two people can disagree and that both can be right? It's not logical, it's psychological and it's very real. You see the young lady, I see the old lady, we are both looking at the same picture and both of us are right. We see the same black lines, the same white space, but we interpret them differently because we have been conditioned to interpret them differently. And unless we value the difference in our perception, unless we value each other and give credence to the possibility that we are both right, the life is not always a dichotomous either or, and there are almost always third alternative. We will never be able to transcend the limits of that conditioning. All I may see is the old woman, but I realize that you see something else, and I value you. I value your perception. I want to understand. So when I become aware of the difference in our perception, I say, good, you see it differently. I help me see what you see. If two people have the same opinions, one is unnecessary, it's not going to do me any good at all. In communicate with someone else who see only the old woman also. I don't want to talk to communicate with someone who agrees with me. I want to communicate with you because you see it differently. I value that difference. By doing that, I not only increase my own awareness, I also affirm you. I give you psychological air. I take my foot off the brake and release the negative energy you may have invested in defending a particular position. I create an environment for synergy. The importance of valuing the difference is captured in an often quoted fable called The Animal School, written by educator Dr. R. H. Reeves. Once upon a time, the animal decided they must do something heroic to meet the problem of a new world, so they organized at school. They adopted an activity curriculum consisting of running, climbing, swimming, and flying to make it easier to administer. All animals took all the subjects. The duck was excellent in swimming, better in fact than his instructor, and make excellent grades in flying, but he has very poor in running. Since he was low in running, he had to stay after school and also drop swimming to practice running. This was kept up until his web feet were badly worn and he was only average in swimming. But average was acceptable in school. Nobody worried about that except the duck. The rabbit started at the top of the class in running but had a nervous breakdown because of so much makeup in swimming. The squirrel was excellent in climbing until he developed frustration in the flying class, where his teacher made him start from the ground up instead of from the treetop. He also developed Charlie horses from overexertion and he got a C in climbing and D in running. The eagle was problem child and had to be disciplined severely in climbing class. He beat all the others to the top of the tree, but instead on using his own way of getting there. At the end of the year, an abnormal eel that could swim exceedingly well and also could run, climb, and fly a little had the highest average and was valedictorian. The prairie dogs stayed out of the school and fought the tax levy because the administration would not add digging and borrowing to the curriculum. They apprenticed their children to the badger and later joined the groundhogs and goopers to start a successful private schools. Force field analysis. In an interdependent situation, synergy is particularly powerful in dealings with negative forces that work against growth and changing. Sociologist Kurt Levin developed a force field analysis model in which he described any current level of performance or being as a state of equilibrium between the driving force that encourage upwards movement and the restraining forces that discourage it. Drawing forces generally are positive, reasonable, logical, conscious, and economic in juxtaposition. Restraining forces are often negative, emotional, illogical, unconscious, and social, psychological. Both sets of forces are very real and must be taken into account in dealing with change. In a family, for example, you have a certain climate in the home, a certain level of positive or negative interactions of feeling safe and unsafe in expressing feelings or talking about concerns of respect or disrespect in communicating among family members. In an interdependent situation, synergy is particularly powerful in dealings with negative forces that work against growth and change. Sociologist Kurt Lewin developed a force field analysis model which he described any current level of performance or being as a state of equilibrium between the driving force that encourage upwards movement and the restraining forces that discourage it. Driving forces generally are positive, reasonable, logical, conscious, and economic in just a position. Restraining forces are often negative, emotionally, logical, unconscious, and social, uh, s- psychological. Both sets of forces are very real and must be taken into account in dealings with change. In a family, for example, you have a certain climate in the home, a certain level of positive or negative interaction of feeling safe or unsafe for expressing feelings or taking about the concerns of respect, of disrespect in communication among family members. You may really want to change the level. You may want to create a climate that is more positive, more respectful, more open and trusting. Your logical reasons for doing that are the driving force that act to raise the level. But increasing those driving forces is not enough. Your efforts are opposed by restraining forces, by the competitive spirit between children in the family, by the different scripting of home life you and your spouse have brought to the relationship by habits that they develop in the family by work or other demands on your time and energies. Increasing the driving forces may bring results for a while, but as long as the restraining forces are there, it becomes increasingly harder. It's like pushing against a spring. The harder you push, the harder it is to push until the force of the spring suddenly throws the level back down. The resulting up and down yo-yo effect cause you to feel, and after several attempts, that people are just the way they are, and that it's too difficult to change. But when you introduce synergy, you use the motive of habit 4, the skill of habit 5, and the interaction of habit 6 to work directly on the restraining forces. You unfreeze them, losing them up, and create new insight that actually transform those restraining forces into driving ones. You involve people in the pupil, immerse them in it so that they soak it in and feel it is their problem, and they tend to become an important part of the solution. As a result, new goals, shared goals are created, and the whole enterprise move upward, often in ways that no one could have anticipated, and the excitement contained within that movement creates a new culture. The people involved in it are enmeshed in each other's humanity and empowered by new and fresh thinking, by new creative alternative and opportunities. I have been involved several times in negotiation between people who were angry at each other and hired lawyers to defend their position, and all that did was to exacerbate the problem because the interpersonal communication deteriorated as it went through the legal process, but the trust level was so low that the parties felt they had no other alternative than to take the issues to court. Would you be interested in going for a win-win solution that both parties feel really good about? I would ask. The response was usually affirmative, but most people didn't really think it was possible. If I can get the other party to agree, would you be willing to start the process of really communicate with each other? Against the answer was usually yes. The result is almost every case has been astounding. Problems that had been legally and psychologically wrangled about for mothers have been settled in a matter of a few hours or days. Most of the solutions weren't the courteous compromise solutions either. They were synergistic, better than the solution proposed independently by either party, and in most cases, the relationship continued even through it had appeared in the beginning that the trust level was so low and rupture in the relationship so large so it to be almost irreparable. At one of our development programs, an executive reported a situation where a manufacturer was being sued by a long-time industrious customer for lack of performance. Both parties felt totally justified in the righteousness of their position and perceive each other as unethical and completely untrustworthy. As they began to practice habit 5, two things became clear. First, early communication problem resulted in a misunderstanding which was later exacerbated by accusations and counter accusations. Seconds, both were initially acting in good faith and didn't like the cost and hassle of a legal fight, but say no other way out. Once these two things became clear, the spirit of habit 4, 5, and 6 took, and the problem was rapidly resolved. The relationship continues to prosper. In another circumstance, I received an early morning phone call from a land developer desperately searching for help. The bank wanted to foreclose because he was not complying with the principals and interest payment schedule, and he was suing the bank to avoid the foreclosure. He needed additional funding to finish and market the land so that he could repay the bank, but the bank refused to provide additional funds until scheduled payments were met. It was a chicken and egg problem with the undercapitalization. In the meantime, the project was languishing. The streets were beginning to look like wheat fields, and the owners of the few homes that had been built were up in arms as they saw their property value drop. The city was also upset over the prime land project falling behind schedule and becoming an eyesore. Ten of thousands of dollars in legal costs had already been spent by the bank and the developers, and the case wasn't scheduled to come to court for several months. In desperation, this developer reluctantly agreed to try the principles of Habit 4, 5, and 6. He arranged a meeting with even more reluctant bank officials. The meeting started at 8 a.m. in one of the bank conference rooms. The tension and mistrust were palpable. The attorney of the bank had committed the bank official to say nothing. They were only to listen, and he alone would speak. He wanted nothing to happen that would compromise the bank position in court. First, for the first hours and a half, I taught the habit 4, 5, and 6. At 9:30, I went to the blackboard and wrote down the bank concern based on our prior understanding. Initially, the bank officials said nothing, but the more we communicated win-win intentions and sought first to understand, the more they opened up to explain and clarify. As they begin to feel understand, the whole atmosphere change and a sense of momentum of excitement over the prospect of peacefully settling the problem was clearly evident. Over the attorney objection, the bank official opened up even more, even about personal concern. When we walk out of her, the first thing the bank president will say is, did we get our money? That are we going to say. By 11, the bank officer were still convinced of their rightness, but they felt understood and were no longer defensive and officious. At that point, they were sufficiently open to listen to the developers' understand concerned, which we wrote down on the other side of the blackboard. The result in deeper mutual misunderstanding and unrealistic expectation, and how continuous communication is a win-win spirit could have prevented the subsequent major problem from developing.